It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants as they struck out the distant shores, pioneers who pushed westward against unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call of workers organized, women who reached for the ballots, a president who chose the moon as our new frontier,
and a king who took us to the mountaintop and pointed the way to the promised land.
Yes.
From WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. The title of this episode, The Collapse of the Hopalong-Cassidy Healthcare Bill. Hopalong-Cassidy was introduced by Senator Cassidy of Louisiana and Graham of South Carolina. The idea behind Hopalong-Cassidy, now it has more than one face, but nonetheless, is to return a Medicaid to the states as a block grant and to allow the states, quote-unquote, to be innovative. In fact, they'd be draconian in putting caps on things such as pre-existing conditions, etc. And the act itself discriminated against the states that have expanded their Medicaid options. Thus, many states would lose millions of dollars with this act. They tried to sweeten the pot by effectively bribing Senator McCoskey of Alaska and Senator Collin of Maine. Now, what happened to them is talking about the biggest fiasco out there. Tuesday will be a very big day, a big headline in the Washington Post. The Senate GOP efforts collapse on a Monday to unwind, to do away with the Affordable Care Act. This is by Sean Sullivan and company, Kinley Snell. Anyway, nonetheless, latest effort to unwind the Affordable Care Act as Obamacare collapsed as the third senator announced her opposition to it. Senator Collin joins Senator McCain from Arizona and also Rand Paul. Now, this is where it is the rubber meets the road, as LBJ would say. Quoting from Orrin Hatch, everybody knows that's going to fail. Senator Hatch led the hearing, a 5-hour hearing on the bill Monday afternoon. You don't have one Democratic vote for this, so it's going to fail. This is from Orrin Hatch. He's been around a very long time. He's from Utah. The development amounted to a massive setback for old man McConnell, and we just finished the Alabama primary, Sweet Home Alabama, and that is Judge Moore versus Luther Strangelove, otherwise known as Big Luther. The polls, the consensus of the polls, is that Big Luther has a lot of work to be done. With 95% confidence, these polls all agree, whether it be the Tafanga Group or Emerson College, etc. And we'll put a link to that particular broadcast, that in the end, Judge Moore will fill the seat of Beauregard. The senator that has now went to the Sessions, went to the Justice Department. Nonetheless, the hearing was evidently in a room that would accommodate many people. They tried to put it in a smaller room, but at the same time, the security forces on the Capitol Hill Police cleared everyone out, and so the only people left were 5 lobbyists. Period. Collin announced, of course, that she would not back the measure, which would redistribute federal health care funding from across the country and sharply curb Medicaid. And we'll get to the Congressional Budget Office. They finally got it out. She was joined, of course, by Rand Paul of Kentucky, a libertarian, and Senator McCain, who's fighting brain cancer with a poor prognosis, so he'll go down in history. And a fourth senator, Lion Ted Cruz, indicated that through his aide Monday that he could not back the bill either. The whip, John Cornyn, he's from Texas, did not rule out the possibility of holding a vote. It's just crazy to hold a vote on something. There are a lot of people who want to vote yes and be recorded as voting yes, so what? Nonetheless, the score did come out from the Congressional Budget Office. The report also estimated $1 trillion loss of Medicaid funds by 2026. Senator Collins delivered a statement saying that the fourth version that the senators had produced in an effort to win new votes is as deeply flawed as the previous iterations. Speaking to reporters, the senator said the administration had lobbied her hard to endorse the bill. She received a call from DJ Trump himself before the score came out. I told him I would go back and look at the numbers one more time, but I was straightforward with him that I was not likely to vote yes on the legislation. Last night a whole new bill came out, which to me spotlighted the problem. Speaking on the Senate floor, McConnell thanked Hopalong Cassidy, but suggested their work had stalled. He thanked other lawmakers in committees of jurisdiction. Now, this is what Senator McCain called a regular order of the Senate. There was only one hearing, though, however. I would like to thank each of these committees, their chairs, their members, their staffs for their hard work to provide the American people with a better way. Well, the American people did not think so. No cuts to Medicaid, save our liberty, a woman shouted. Many of the people demonstrating were in wheelchairs. Graham, who spoke quickly and intensely, well, anyway, my goal is to get the money and power out of Washington closer to the people. He lied. But even Trump expressed skepticism about the bill's passing, blaming McConnell and Collins for its unexpected demise in an interview with Rick and Bubba's show. That's something in Alabama, I guess. You can call it what you want, but the only reason we don't have it is because of Senator McCain. DJ Trump said, looks like Susan Collins and some others will vote against it, so we're going to lose 2 or 3 votes in that end. Nonetheless, Senator Bennett, he's from Colorado, was especially animated during the remarks, raising his voice as he questioned the motivation of Republican senators. Why are we here? He asked his colleagues. Making matters worse, he asked, Cruz made it clear over the weekend that he had grave reservations. Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray, they're working on a bipartisan package to stabilize Obamacare. If you mean by fixing Obamacare just dishing out more money to our insurance companies, then no, said John Cornyn. But anyway, they are working on this, and Hopalong Cassidy himself came in to apologize. The hearing on the bill that they were trying to hurry through the Congress, several hearing rooms that could fit hundreds were left idle. They got a room that would fit 30 people, and people were standing in the hall. Nonetheless, Orrin Hatch dropped the gavel, had the room cleared, as we said before, except for 5 members of the public allowed to witness the long hearing. It was roughly about 5 hours. That would cut $1 trillion from health care, deny insurance to millions, and dump the whole health care mess on ill-equipped states. I'm sorry about this process, Hopalong Cassidy said. he should be very sorry. And this is Mr. Dana Milback. He should be sorry for wasting the time of the American people. This is what happens when you have amateur hour there. The administration didn't know what they were doing, literally went into this willy-nilly, and the Republicans have been trying for 7 years to repeal Obamacare. And as the late, great Jerry Pippin said, on time the people would like it, and all the polling indicate that the people do like it. There are some people out there that don't like it, that are confused about what it is. And they don't understand. But the problem is with block granting. They had block granting during Ronald Wilson Reagan, returning to the states. The states would be ill-equipped to do a proper health care program. So you'd have states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and those taking the money and squandering. Period. So this is the story of what happened. The 5 people, I guess, left. 3 of them were lobbyists. That figures. Hopalong Cassidy saying he was sorry. Then complained that they didn't have time to read Obamacare before it was passed. Republicans complained about Democrats enacting that was Obamacare. They didn't have time to hear it. He went through the regular order of the Senate. There were all kinds of hearings on Obamacare. They complained false that Democrats didn't wait for the Congressional Budget Office, and they did, in fact, did that. From Senator Grassley. He's chair of the Judiciary Committee. Essentially acknowledged, but what's in the bill doesn't matter. I could maybe give you 10 reasons why this bill shouldn't be considered, he said last week, but the Republicans campaigned on this often. Yeah, this is a red herring out there. What they did, they campaigned on one thing: Obama. So they used a racist narrative, just like the birthers, and the same thing that DJ Trump championed, to hoodwink people into believing this was a bad bill. This was a start, starting with Harry S. Truman. Repeal failed, then the skinny repeal failed, and now the last-ditch Hopalong Cassidy bill is in jeopardy and shouldn't be out there. Part of the problem that you have is that when these bills fail like that and the public loses faith in them, even if it had passed, the opposition would have been so intense. And this is what DJ Trump and his people don't quite understand. Whether or not we get single payer within the 4 years here or 8 years, he will be there at the end of his term. The probability of DJ Trump getting reelected at this point in history, now things could change, are nil and none, as LBJ would say. So that is the problem out there. Remember on Obamacare, and this is what Milback points out here, to try to win votes, they had the Cornhusker kickback, the Louisiana purchase back in the spring. Senator Graham of Hopalong Cassidy warned if they start doing that, this is of these special treatments, that crap, they're going to lose me. Well, he's evidently put this forward. So you have the polar payola now, and the of all things, the caribou cash out. That was for Senators Murkowski and Collins, and didn't work out, making it easier for insurers to avoid covering maternity care, old people, and people with pre-existing conditions. He even offered a Cajun kickback to his co-sponsor Hopalong Cassidy, provision that boosting states such as Louisiana that were late to expand. In Louisiana, they did finally, under the new governor, expand Medicaid. Shameful. Republicans reaped the chaos they sowed. Even after the protesters were removed, the chants of hundreds in the hall could still be heard. Fight, shame, etc. In the hearing room, Democratic senators were only slightly mild. A disgrace, as from Senator Bennett, we reported that. Senator Warner said a travesty. Senator Wyden, he's from Oregon, proclaimed that nobody's going to buy a lemon just because it's the last car on the lot. Wyden was so tough on Hopalong Cassidy that Hatch had to interrupt and said respect for Hopalong Cassidy is not easy for him. The chairman said, well, selling this turkey, you bet it wasn't easy. And this is the problem. Now with the Congressional Budget Office put their prediction out, let me just go to that and we'll append this. This is the preliminary analysis of legislation that would replace subsidies for health care with block grants over a period of 2017-2026. The full staff of the Joint Committee on Taxation estimated the legislation would reduce the budget deficits by $133 billion, but the projected savings from the House-passed reconciliation bill, these savings would occur mainly because on the legislation outlaid new block grants between 20 and 26 would be smaller than the reduction in net subsidies to insurance companies. The number of people with comprehensive health insurance that cover high-cost medical events would be reduced by millions compared with the baseline projection for each year from CBC. There is what they posted, and this is a preliminary analysis. We won't read all this, but nonetheless, number of people with comprehensive high-cost events would be. Oops, need to go back up here. Would be reduced by millions. This is the Joint Taxation Committee and CBC. The numbers could vary widely depending on how the states implement the legislation. Second, enrollment in a non-group of coverage would be lower because of reduction in subsidies. And third, the enrollment in all types of health insurance would be lower because of the penalties for not having health insurance would be replaced. These losses in coverage would be partially offset by enrollment in a new program established by the states if they get it established. The decrease in the number of insured people would particularly large starting in 2020 when the legislation would make major changes in the funding. The CBC and the Joint Taxation Committee would need several weeks to do this correctly. Major provisions of the legislation starting in 2018, the legislation would reduce the federal share of Medicaid funding for adults made eligible for that program, the Affordable Care Act, to 90% for 2 years compared with 94% in 2018, 93% in 2019. On the current law, in 19 and 20, legislation would make funding $10 and $15 billion respectively available to health insurers to subsidize. By 2020, the legislation would set a limit on, this is the so-called cap. Medicaid funding would be eliminated for adults made eligible for the program by the Affordable Care Act. Tax credits for health insurance coverage purchased through the marketplace established there to reduce the costs to low-income people would be repealed. Funds would be appropriated for block grants to states with amounts based on historic federal Medicaid funding. States would be allowed to modify certain requirements there, and we talked about those earlier, like pre-existing conditions, etc. Very nasty situation occurring here, and the amount would be appropriated for new block grants at $1.2 trillion from 20 to 26. That's about $230 billion less than the amount in the CBC's March 2016 baseline. Those subsidies for adults made eligible for Medicaid by Obamacare and for insurance obtained in the marketplace. Now, however, the CBC estimates at least $150 billion of the $1.2 trillion in the budget authorization for block grants would not result in outlays by 2026. Very tricky here because they've effectively rewritten the bill. So since they've rewritten the bill itself, this could not be a complete analysis. So we have to look around, and the CBC points this out. To states for market-based care, in general, the allocation of grants under the legislation would shift funding away from states that already have expanded Medicaid. In 2020, both groups of states would receive about 10% less funding for the new block grants. Medicaid under the Obamacare would receive about 30% less funding there. The legislative grants would allocate under a formula in which the basic shift over time. In 2020, 146 billion would be allocated on the basis of how much states and their residents received from two sources of subsidy during four recent calendar years. 190 billion would be allocated to states according to their share of residents, which with incomes between 50% and 138% of poverty. Now, to enter into arrangements with health insurers to reduce premiums in a non-group there. These are some of the things the grant to states could be used for 7 basic things: to help people purchase non-group coverage if they have or are projected to have high insurance costs, to provide payments to healthcare providers, to provide assistance to reduce out-of-the-pocket, that's co-pays, to help people in addition to those triggered by the first purpose purchasing a non-group coverage, to provide Medicaid benefits through private insurers for people besides those made eligible by the Affordable Care Act, with no more than 20% of the funding being used for that purpose, to establish and maintain a program to provide health care through arrangements with managed care organizations for people who are not eligible for Medicaid or Children's Health Care CHIPS. So these are some of the things here and how the states could use the grants. You can read this. We will append it up there. But all told, the federal spending on Medicaid reduced by about $1 trillion over 2017 2026 period under this legislation. Now, $1 trillion, that is a lot of money. That is all you need to hear. We'll move on now to the sports of the day. Incidentally, Mr. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, was on his knees with his players. A monumental situation, no doubt about that. You know, and in total, over 200 players were there. Incidentally, the Cowboys, we don't usually give the score, and we'll give this 28-17 over Arizona. So there we go. Mr. Judge, incidentally, has blasted 500 homers. That beats the 49 rookie title from, I don't remember his name right now, who at one time, Mark McGwire. So, we go there.
One big thing.
50 was always a magic number when it came to home runs. It got minimized during an era when players sailed past that on the way to the low 70s, but half 100 is still a big deal, particularly if you're a rookie, because it means you're the first to ever get there. Aaron Judge did on Monday, tying then passing Mark McGwire in the same day. It was the second consecutive day where he hit 2 home runs. Judge's season has been like a...
Mr. Judge is with the New York Yankees baseball team. Why I'm thinking of that. Anyway, we'll do the scores now. The Royals were in New York. The Yankees 11-3 there. The Yankees had 15 hits, no errors, and the Royals 6 hits and 1 error. The Atlanta team was also in New York. Atlanta 9-2 over the Mets. The Nationals were in Philadelphia. 3-1 was the score. Nationals over the Phillies. The Blue Jays were in Fenway Park. Blue Jays 6-4. And in the second game, the Mets prevailed over Atlanta 3-2. There was a doubleheader, incidentally. And the Astros were in Dallas. 11-2 was the score. Astros over the Rangers. The Angels were on the south side of Chicago. White Sox win 4-2. The Cubbies were in St. Louis, and they had a slugfest down there. 10-2 was the score. Cubs over the Cards. The Cubs had 10 hits, no errors, and the Cardinals 6 hits and 1 error. Mr. Lester pulled that one out. The Marlins were out in Denver. Marlins 5-4. The Giants were in Arizona 9-2. Giants finally win one. The Mariners were in Oakland. The Mariners 7-1 over the Athletics. The Padres were in Dodger Stadium. Dodgers 9-3 there. Mr. Darvish was the winner. Mr. Wood was the loser. And let's quickly check the standings. Here, Boston is already in the playoffs, and so are the Yankees. That's in the American League East. Cleveland has won the division in the Central, and in the American League West, Houston has won their division. In the National League East, the Nationals are there. The Cubbies are still working on it. The Brewers are 6 games back, and the Cards are 7 games back. And in the West, it is the Dodgers. They've got the division. The D-backs, Diamondbacks, have clinched a playoff berth. So that's where they are right now. Let's see if we have anything here for that. The playoff schedule. I think on the hunt for October is where we want to go. Nonetheless, Boston and New York's 100% there. So we could be seeing games remaining. Boston will be at Toronto. And that's where they are right now. And then they will go to Houston to finish out the schedule. The Nationals will be in Philadelphia tonight, and then they will go to Pittsburgh and finish it out in Pittsburgh. The Yankees will be in Florida, and they will finish it out in Toronto. And Cleveland will be at the Twins, and then they will be at the White Sox to finish it out. The Cubbies will be in St. Louis as they are now, and then they will go to Cincy and finish it out on the 30th in Cincinnati. Kansas City will be playing the Tigers in Detroit, and then they go to Arizona to finish it out. The Brewers will be in Cincy, and they'll finish it out with the Cardinals in St. Louis. And the Cardinals, of course, will be at the Cubs tonight, and then they'll move to finish it out in St. Louis. So that's basically where they are at the present time. We won't go into some of those. The wild cards, New York, then Minnesota. It'll be in one of the wild cards. And the Angels have fallen out. In the National League, we have Arizona 100% there, and possibly Colorado at 71.4% of there. So those are some, but these are the wild cards. So you probably would have Arizona versus Colorado, we think. And the Yankees and Minnesota in the American League wild card race there. There'll be two of those wild cards are going on the National League wild card. And there's a second wild card also going on, so we'll see where those go. Nonetheless, this will do it for us. The collapse of the Hopalong Cassidy Healthcare Act is our episode on the 26th of September 2017. And we'll talk to you soon. Good day.